welcome to this Sutherland County Committee. Recording started, thank you. Okay, do you have any apologies for absence?
I haven't received any, Chair.
Okay. I notice we don't have Councillor Morrison with us, and I know that Councillor Curry has given her apology, so if you could record that, please, Anne, that would be good.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Morrison, you're here. That's good. That's great. Thank you. That's fine. Okay, we're just one short. That's Kirsty, but we knew she wasn't coming, so that's fine. Members, do we have any declarations of interest?
None.
No. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that. Right. First report we have today is item 3 on the agenda. That's the Scottish Fire and Rescue Local Performance Report, and we've got Jason Gardner with us to deliver that report. And we've got a new gentleman, but Paddy Farrell is here attending in support of Jason, but also he will be taking deliver this report in the future. So thank you and welcome both of you. Jason, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I've forwarded on a copy of the report for you to review. Hope you've all got a copy or have seen a copy. To provide a little bit of context to the report, I forwarded on, kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what has been, I know for us all, a very, very challenging quarter as we move forward. The report that I've forwarded on provides the current figures for quarter 1 for 21-22 from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Services Performance Management Database. And in that, we've achieved the priorities we set out in the local committee plan for Sutherland for 2021-22. A number of activities continue to be a significant part of our protection and prevention work. In reducing accidental domestic property fires and serious injuries and deaths from property fires across Sutherland. And a lot of the work that we've been undertaking has, as I'm sure you're aware, been impacted significantly by COVID. Over the previous quarters, a lot of the restrictions that we've put in place in line with the Scottish Government have prevented us doing a lot of the preventative work that we would normally do. And we've restricted only exceptionally high and vulnerable risk households to achieving home fire safety visits. Primarily, that was really to protect our workforce, to protect vulnerable members of the community, and to protect the NHS in line with the Scottish Government guidance. As we're moving forward, we've now lifted those restrictions and we're back to home safety visits being available to all households across Sutherland, and we're working hard to catch up with the backlog of visits that we've got to get through over the next sort of 2 or 3 quarters. The priority continues to be with those high risk and high vulnerable households. Other preventative activities are still suspended at the moment, and they include the Drive and Ambition work that we do with schools and the fire skills courses that we do on fire stations. But hopefully we are working towards reintroducing those and putting in a safe system of work to get those back up and running as soon as we possibly can. Whilst 2020 and 2021 have provided a number of challenges, they've also provided a number of opportunities for us to work in partnership. And during 2020, we worked very, very closely with NHS Highland to ensure that the fire station at Dornet was available for flu vaccinations, which was exceptionally successful. And it provided a really, really good system of work to administer the flu vaccine to as many people as we could. And as a fire and rescue service, we were able to take the opportunity through that to provide every vehicle that drove through with a fire safety pack, both in terms of safe winter driving, safe home fire safety advice and guidance. So, and more latterly, and my colleague Paddy Farrell across Caithness has also been supplying fire and rescue service premises for COVID testing, along with Dornoch and Lairg down in Sutherland. So they've been really, really positive outcomes. In terms of operational incidents, starting through with accidental dwelling fires, in quarter 1, we've only got 2 to report. And if we break down the analysis of those incidents, one did not result in any damage to the property at all. It was burnt foodstuff on a cooker. All that was lost was the food and the pan. The remainder of the property remained intact. And the second one was a bathroom heater with clothing put on top. There was significant damage to the bathroom. It was confined to the bathroom. In both cases, the occupiers were 65 plus, and our fire safety teams, our community fire safety teams, worked extensively with those and with partner agencies. We submitted AP1s and did as much work as we possibly could to prevent a recurrence. The quarter shows, really pleasingly, no fatal dwelling fires, so no casualties on that front, and also no fatal casualties either. So really pleasing trend that continues. Deliberate fires, we had 2 that we attended during quarter 1. Both involved grassland. Both were classed as antisocial behaviour. One of them was in Brora, and the second one was at the Mound on the A9. And again, as always, we've worked with colleagues in Police Scotland to try and identify those responsible, and Police Scotland have taken that forward. But I've got no feedback from Police Scotland as to any outcomes. We attended during this quarter 1 road traffic collision, which again was a minor road traffic collision. There was no requirement for the fire and rescue service to provide any extrication, and there were no significant casualties in that. And probably one of the more pleasing figures is the reduction in unwanted fire alarm signals across Sutherland. We're down to 10 for this quarter, which is really, really good. It's a decrease of 15 on the same quarter last year. Huge amount of work goes on when we attend a fire alarm. We work with the responsible person. We try and provide education. They can be very draining in terms of resources for the community. It brings firefighters out of their primary employment, and there's a cost to the service and also a road risk. So we do try very, very hard. They're a pleasing result. We'll continue to work with that to try and reduce those figures. And as I say, strategies are constantly being reviewed and updated. Station crewing levels, we're continuing to work very, very hard as district commanders to try and identify and attract recruits onto RDS stations. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has made a significant investment this year in terms of they've developed a national RVDS recruitment and support team. That's being headed by a Deputy Assistant Chief Officer. And they're working at a national level to try and put together strategies to help us locally streamline our recruitment process. The pandemic has impacted both on the recruitment and the retention of personnel across the area, and we're finding it really quite difficult in some regions. But again, we're trying to be innovative. Certainly from my area, I've lost four firefighters simply because they've had to be transient to move away to find primary employment because they've either been furloughed. I think 2 of them probably is a good example. 2 of them have actually go offshore, and we can't support them with the hours that they're able to offer. So we're looking at that and working through that. And realistically, we will continue to do that. Every fire station now has got a banner outside of it. We've got pull-up banners, and a huge amount of advertising materials being generated that we're trying to get out into the community to raise that awareness. And we continue to be open to suggestions from community councils, from local organisations as to how we can bring more people into that role and increase the availability of appliance. That's the overview of the report. I'm quite happy, Chair, to take any questions from members and any observations you may have as a result. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much for the report. As we would expect, it shows excellent results, and I know how hard you and your firefighters across the Highlands work to keep us all safe. So it's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. Just a couple of small questions for myself. First of all, it's good to see a reduction in the false alarm signals. That's been a bugbear for quite a while, and you've been really done well to drive that down. So that's excellent. It's good to see that you're working with the community to make sure that people understand that how to operate these systems properly. So and that's a good result as well. One question about the fatal fire that was recorded for Golspie. It's in the narrative, but it doesn't seem to be showing on the stats. I'm not quite sure what page it is. So I'll get to the right page in a second. I think it's on page 9, Jason. Or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's November last year, and it doesn't seem to be showing on the stats for them. Is that an omission, or is there a reason for that?
There is, and it's been questioned. And the recording system that we use for all the information from the database that we draw from this, we can't differentiate because involve the garage. We're having an amendment made to our recording system because it won't differentiate between a domestic garage and a commercial garage. So we've raised that, and the system that we use to generate these details and these numbers is being looked at by our ICT team because it's an omission on our part. So yes, it is recorded. It was absolutely right, November of last year. It isn't showing on the figures, but it is being addressed. That's
fine, thank you. I know it is in the narrative, so I know it's being recorded, but I was just wondering why it wasn't showing in the stats. One other thing I was going to ask you about was the station availability. I noticed that in Tongue there was 0 availability for the quarter, and which is obviously a great concern to everybody. I noticed you have 3 firefighters in the area. Was the lack of availability because none of them were available at any time during the quarter, or what was the situation for that? Thanks.
From a policy point of view with the fire and rescue service, we cannot mobilise a firefighter, a station with less than 4 firefighters on an appliance. What I'll do, if I may, Chair, is I'll pass across to Paddy Farrell. He's the station commander responsible for Tongue and Betty Hill, and Paddy could probably throw a bit more light on that, if I may.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for having me this morning. Just as to follow on from Jason's point, we have obviously safe crewing levels within the service, so anytime we would mobilise an appliance to an incident, they would need to have a minimum of 4 firefighters on it, regardless of whether it's a car fire, a road traffic collision, or anything else. Each fire appliance that mobilises has to have a minimum number of firefighters on it. Now, that minimum number standard across the board is 4 firefighters. Now the crew, the actual station establishment at Tongue is 3 firefighters, so that unfortunately that means that they're not able to mobilise to an incident. So as it stands, unfortunately Tongue aren't able to mobilise to incidents. We do have, now next month, we have got 2 open evenings planned in for Tongue and Betty Hill fire stations. Tongue will be on a Monday the 13th of September, and Betty Hill will have an open evening on Thursday the 16th of September. The main drive really for the open evening is, of course, to take advantage of now that COVID restrictions are now allowing us to have more engagement on the stations, and that we're now able to openly engage with people on a more face-to-face basis. But the main drive is obviously to encourage recruitment for those stations, and Tongue in particular is one that we're very, very keen to attract new members for. So unfortunately, it's not that the 3 personnel on station weren't available. It's just simply that there isn't the minimum number of crew on the station available to safely crew an appliance.
That's fine, Paddy, thanks for that. Right, I've got a number of members with their hands up, so we'll start with Councillor McGilvery.
Thanks, Chair. Just to emphasise the success of the flu vaccination process in Durham Fire Station last year, and just to ask if it's too early yet to say if that's going to be repeated or if we revert to another system, Jason.
Certainly, we've got capacity. If that's something that NHS Highland want to revisit and do again, we'll certainly do everything we can to support that and to facilitate it. It absolutely was a huge success, both in terms of being able to safely deliver the flu vaccine to as many people as we possibly could across the area, but also from a fire and rescue service point of view, we made up 275 packs. Which were all handed out. Every single vehicle got one, and there was a wealth of information in there for people to take away. So it really was partnership working at its best, and absolutely, if NHS Highland feel that they can do that again this year, I'll certainly do everything I can to make Dornoch available, and any other fire station. The only challenge really would be that the fire station does need to have a front and back door so that people can drive through, but that's the only restriction.
Thank you for that, Jason. Councillor Munro.
I rather think that Councillor Morrison might have been ahead of me, but nevertheless, I'll take it. Thank you, Chair. Good fashion. Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear about the recruitment nights in Tongue and Betty Hill. They're both in our ward. Hugely challenging, and it's been ever thus the fire service, but it never stops them going out there and pitching to do their best to recruit. But what you'll have to accept is national policy, and we're not going to change that, does make it tough to recruit in these areas when you look at the demographic and the requirements of what it is to be a firefighter. But fair play to them, they do turn out every time and they do their level best. So I'm very happy, and we'll look forward to supporting you then, now that we can actually get out and about. So thank you for coming here and doing that. The other thing I wanted to say, and Councillor McGilvey already covered it, was thank you to the fire service for not just the response to partners in need. This time it's giving stations so that vaccination could take place, but it's their consistent response to partners in need. A couple of years ago, it was the making available of stations so that essential workers could access toilets when we were having all sorts of problems and other things, and doing that might seem a small issue. It's not a small issue to key workers who travel the length and breadth of the Highlands and can't access facilities at given times, so on and so forth, same during the pandemic. So it's just a huge shout out and a great big thank you for their consistent help to partners in need. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Linda. Councillor Morrison, you had your hand up and then it disappeared, so apologies if I skipped past you. Do you want to contribute?
No problem. Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the report. I just want to touch really on the availability. 9 of the 11 stations are available. The recruitment is down from the last report, which is a bit worrying. I really don't know what we can do to change that. Unfortunately, I know what the problem is. The bar is set too high nationally, and you have to have the same level of commitment whether you're in Durness, Tongue, Golspie as you have in Glasgow, and it just doesn't work in the Highlands. And unfortunately, that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be. So you can put banners up to your blue in the face if there's no people here to respond to them. It doesn't really matter. So the open nights will be good. I think the only thing we can do long term is merge Tongue and Betty Hill together. 20 minutes between each place. 20 minutes is still quicker than coming from Durness to Tongue, Thursday to Betty Hill. So, we just have to think out with the box, to be quite honest with you. It's not going to change. It's worse than it's been getting in the last 10 years. We had a crew in Tongue till a couple of years ago. We're sitting with 3 now. 3 can't move. So, we have to, if we're not going to get anybody this time round, we really need to think about what our next stages are. It'd be quite good too, Jason, I don't know if it's possible, if you could let us know what amount of these crews are in development stages as well, because you might have 10 personnel, but you might have 5 of them that are in development, which means they can't go and shout if they've just completed their initial. So sometimes the figures are a wee bit askew with there as well. Disappointed that Loch Inver's gone to 3. I'm not sure what's happened there. We've had this carry on 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we got them up to about 9 at one stage. So to go back to 3 is bitterly disappointing from my point of view. And I think it's just, as you see in the red figures there, it's just the trend all over. So we really need to be looking at it with the box, unfortunately. I just got one issue. One of the boys in Darnus went on a initial course there 2-3 weeks ago. He was told on the Thursday night that he had to be down and rest on Sunday. So can we give personnel a wee bit more warning than 2 days, 3 days? I don't know if that was out with your control, but you can maybe have a look into it and see. It's not everybody can drop from their job and just go into a 2-week initial course. So. But other than that, I know it's all doom and gloom from me, but we are where we are, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, do you want to come back in?
Please, if I may, Chair, just to address the councillor's concerns. Just realistically, Councillor Morris is absolutely right. There is a national standard that's been set for applicants into the fire and rescue service to attain. That's a national standard, and that's been decided by kind of people that are out with my level of expertise. But firefighting is a very, very challenging and arduous role, and the priority that we have above and beyond everything else is firefighter and public safety. And I know I spoke in the report about the RVDS support team has been put in place nationally, and one of the parameters that they've been given to look at is our recruitment criteria and whether they can be moved. But at the moment, and I think probably quite rightly, is that criteria is at a national level, and it is being looked at. In terms of personnel in development, once they come off the initial task and task management course, can ride a fire appliance. The only thing they can't do is wear breathing apparatus until they've done their initial breathing apparatus course. Occasionally that can impact on the availability of an appliance, but we work really, really hard not to let it. And certainly in the role that Station Commander Farrell and I play, operational control at Dundee will often contact us and say, can we mobilise the appliance? And depending on what they're going to, we have got a level of flexibility, and we will try and work with that. I don't know about the incident at Durness with 2 or 3 days notice. I'll certainly look at that, because you're absolutely right. You know, we have to understand that it isn't something that we would expect at a local level. I would suspect it's possibly come from nationally. We do have to accept that, you know, these people have got families and primary employment and commitments, and can't just drop at 3 days notice and attend a course in Inverness or Cambuslang. So it is something to work on. And to close, realistically, yeah, the number of red arrows on the station availability is down. I'm not going to kind of blame COVID completely for it. COVID has been a massive factor, and certainly across the area, the number of personnel I've lost, 70% have cited COVID and the impact on their family and their careers and their income as being a reason for having to either leave the service or take a leave of absence from the service while they go and work offshore or go and work out with the area. So it is a challenge. It's one that probably occupies 50% of our working day. And again, it really is just trying to attract those people who are able to give us cover and support us to keep the appliances on the run. So I will look at that Durness issue though, Councillor, and I'll get back to you. I'll drop you an email once I've got an answer.
Thanks, Jason. Councillor Morris, you want to come back in?
Yeah, just a quick point there. I did ask this question a couple of years ago about trying to recruit people from 16 and 17-year-olds rather than wait until they're 18 and they've flown the nest. So, I mean, you know, 18, okay, you can do lots of things when you're 18, but you can also do lots of things when you're 16. So I think for remote and rural, that we should be trying to get people at 16-year-olds, male and females, rather than waiting until they leave school, don't have a job, and then decide to leave the area. So at least if they were part of the retained society at 16 and they're getting an income, it might keep them in the area as well. So can we have a look at that again, please?
In terms of the age, the minimum age, it's nothing that we can change. It's a national UK standard that they are not permitted to apply for the fire and rescue service until they've had their 18th birthday. And that's also something that is reinforced by the Fire Brigade Union. But it's a national requirement. And I can't, unless Paddy wants to come with anything additional, I can't imagine that will move at all.
Sorry, no, Jason, I don't. I think that is the national standard. I think certainly the most recent information I think I've seen is that it's 17 and a half, I think, before you can even apply. And I think by the time then you go through the recruit process, you then have to be your 18th birthday, I think, has to have passed before you could actually start your employment. So no, I think you're correct with that one.
Okay, thank you. Linda, would you like to come back in?
Thank you for your patience, Chair. I'll be brief. Years ago, just when we moved to separate boards or national boards, not separate boards, national boards for Scottish Fire and Rescue Services and Police Scotland, there were shadows of discussions, and there were shadows of discussions around a joint blue light service for remote and rural areas. Did that ever launch? Did that ever develop into anything? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. We're other brigades across England have successfully introduced that, and there is there are TriService officers who wear the 3 blue light service hats, and that is being trialled across a number of areas in England. They can be a retained firefighter, they can be a special constable, or they can be a first responder for the ambulance service. I've got absolutely nothing I can refer to in writing, but I understand that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is in very, very early stages of looking at that and looking how we can coordinate and work with. The only major challenge is, unfortunately, the biggest hurdle, I think, is to be a special constable and a firefighter has a potential conflict of interest. So I think there's something there that they have to work around, and I think it's more of a challenge that's overcomable. England have managed to achieve it, but I think we're in the very, very early stages, Councillor, of looking at it. But I wouldn't like to say that there's anything written down that I can put my hands on.
Many thanks.
Thank you for that, Jason and Paddy. It sounds like an opportunity, Jason, so I'll be interested to see what the outcomes of that is going forward. Okay, I don't have any other hands up, and I don't have any further questions myself, so thank you both for attending. Really appreciate it. You're welcome to stay, but I suspect you probably have other things to be doing with your time than sit and listen to us. But thank you once again for attending. It's really appreciated.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
members.
Thank you, members. We'll leave if you don't mind. Thank you very, very much. Have a good morning. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank you,
members.
Chair. Thank you, members.
Item 4 on the agenda is the Northwest 2045, our future, our choice. You have a report now, it's been circulated to you, and Phil, are you going to talk through this report?
Yes, we've got a presentation first, if you'll allow me to share that with you members.
Yeah, go.
Okay, hopefully you can see that.
Yeah, that's fine, Phil.
Okay, right, thank you. Okay, so I've brought 2 guests with me today. We've got Lewis McCaskill, who is the Vice Chair of the Assynt Foundation, and Sophie Edwards, who is one of the local interviewers that we recruited for the project, and they're going to do parts of the presentation as well. There will be an opportunity to ask some questions or make any comments at the end. So if I just hand over to Lewis.
Thanks, Phil. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation today. About 2 years ago, just over, David Balhari, Chief Executive of the John Muir Trust, made an approach to several groups in the Northwest area to gauge interest in having a discussion around the social, economic and environmental opportunities and constraints affecting the area. As a result of that, the project, as we're talking about now, was sort of born. As you can see, there's approximately 12 different entities who comprise who make up the group, and they're made up of a really wide sort of range of people and groups, both public, private, NGOs, and various other sort of community-owned landowners and private landowners. As you can see there, I'm not going to go through them all. The name itself was sort of fairly self-explanatory. Northwest, because the area that we are looking to cover ranges from Coyach in the south all the way up to Durness and then across to Betty Hill in the east. The inland boundary is something that, you know, is up for, it's not definitive. The project is hopefully going to evolve, and if particular communities who aren't included within it at the moment want to become part of it, we're more than happy to listen and talk to them. Could we go to the next slide, please? There are 3 key objectives that were set up from the start. What we did was we managed to secure some funding through public and private sources, and engaged a consultant who has helped us and assisted us throughout, and this has been really useful, although funding's been a bit of an issue at times. But anyway, with the help of this consultant and group meetings, we've come up with 3 clear objectives which are stated there. Number 1, the community-led long-term vision for the future of the Northwest area. Secondly, to develop a platform for the community voice to shape opportunities now and into the future. And finally, establishing very much a partnership approach with decision makers, both at local and national government levels. Next slide, please. In fact, at this point, I'll hand over to Sophie. Sophie's going to take us through the methodology and other things. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you, Lewis. Okay, so in terms of the methodology for this project, a draft vision was developed, drawing from discussions with local community groups, key stakeholders and findings from previous consultations. An initial draft was created with the view to test through interviews, surveys and workshops. A young person's survey was distributed. This was a survey covering those that currently live in the area, also including those that had moved away due to work or study, which was a chance to hear their views for the future of the Highlands. In terms of the interviews, we recruited and trained 8 young local interviewers, including myself. So in line with the vision that this be a community-led project, it was important that even the collection of opinions be gathered by those living in those communities. So in April, 8 interviewers were recruited and trained from across the Highlands, engaging with their own communities. That was 2 covering Coyach and Assynt, 2 from Scowrie, Kinlochbervie and Durness, and 3 for Tongue and Betty Hill. The interviews were completed. That was 64 interviews in total. They were in-depth interviews that were carried out throughout April, whereby a cross-section of each community was covered, gathering views and ideas and the chance to test the draft vision. And this was very much an kind of expert witness idea across education, employment status, sector, age, and across all settlements. In addition, a public survey was circulated with 247 responses. And again, this is just broadening our range of responses. We also engaged with schools. A dedicated high school student survey was designed and circulated with 27 responses. And to follow up, we had online discussions where possible over Zoom. In terms of analysing the research, we held a discussion group, which was a chance to share our experiences as interviewers, highlight common themes and aspirations, and after which the findings were then analysed. There were workshops held in the development trusts in the Northwest, whose priorities were in line with this vision, and engagement with Northwest community councils, whose findings were communicated through the Geopark. There were then 3 community workshops. These were Zoom workshops to share the findings with the people of each locality and to shape the next iteration of the vision. If we could just have the next slide, please, Phil. And moving on to the next slide, the key findings. Thank you, Phil. So there was a lot of key findings here. In terms of the first one there, the strong feeling expressed that the area is threatened by irreversible decline due to many factors contributing to ongoing depopulation. There was a common thread of concern surrounding the falling school roll, with the fear that once a school is closed, this can devastate a community. So this was quite a big talking point. Many also feel the area has been disadvantaged and ignored by successive governments, local and national, by comparisons to other remote rural areas. Almost like a remote island-like community without the benefits of being an actual island. The desire for a revival of thriving community life with all ages involved, particularly attracting and retaining more young people and families. Many people feel that young people and families can have a powerful effect in uniting and revitalising our small communities. A key priority raised by many is strengthening and diversifying the local economy with a more resilient model involving existing industries, investing in new ones and simulating small-scale enterprise, diversifying, broadening the range of jobs and security. Due to the timing of this research, COVID was a big talking point, obviously, and the introduction of a new way of working, shifting the traditional boundaries. And then finally, a desire for coordinated action, not a single solution, to improve services, infrastructure, jobs and housing, and to ensure these actions are good for both people and the environment, not one at the expense of the other. A unified approach in the preservation and the evolution of the area. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. The next slide basically highlights where we are now and where we're sort of looking to go forward as a group, as a Northwest 2045. We have produced a vision. The vision has been circulated, and we've basically, attempted to engage with people and groups like yourselves and others as an initial sort of first pass. But we do have a kind of road line, or at least a timeline sort of set out, as you can see from this slide, which I'm not going to go through in detail. There's a lot of information you've already received, but basically breaking it down, you can see that we've got short-term actions over the next 5 years up to 2026, and then beyond that up to the targeted sort of end of timeline, which is 2045. There's 6 key outputs that we're looking to get to, and I think they're sort of defined on the next slide, if we can move to that. Thank you, Phil. We've got affordable local housing solutions we're trying to develop. We're looking to explore the local infrastructure and broadband solutions, developing the case for multi-use rural hubs, scoping the local food strategy, developing approaches to land management, including through the regional land use partnerships, and finally investing in community resilience and voice. Now, I'm sure you've heard all of this before from various other people and groups in the past. I personally think the difference with this group here is that we come from such a broad background and base of public and private and other sort of entities, that we have a critical mass within this group that I've certainly not been part of in previous iterations of other entities, and so I think that's really critical. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lewis. And the last slide falls to me, members, which is really the next steps for the council. So the first item is around partner and community engagement, which coinciding with the meeting this morning with the presentation to County Committee, there's a launch and promotion of the vision in the community. And this has been backed up with a small bid to the call funding, that's the Coyac and Ascent Living Landscape. There's a small amount of funding available there for a short-term programme of further community engagement. That may result in an action plan and ideally further funding bids. There's also a presentation to the Community Partnership, Sutherland Community Partnership on the 17th of September, again to raise awareness and also to try and secure the support of community planning partners. So, committee adopting the vision, which is the recommendation in the report today, what does that mean? Well, we believe it would demonstrate County Committee recognition of the challenges faced in the North West and a commitment to support actions that address those challenges. So that might include using it as an evidence base to inform decision making and resource allocation when those come before members, and as a tool to aid discussion and joint working with other remote rural areas in Highland and beyond. In terms of council support for short actions, you've just seen the slide that Lewis highlighted there, and clearly some of those dovetail with council priorities. Not all of them do, but some of them do. So where these coincide with council service delivery, such as affordable housing or place planning to strengthen the community voice, then again, there's an opportunity for the council to demonstrate its support. There's also the opportunity to identify a local contribution to Highland-wide and national priorities, for example, around climate change and net zero. The Regional Land Use Partnership is a newly emerging initiative from the Scottish Government. There are only 5 pilots in Scotland, and Highland has one of them. And as a result of the partnership that came together around North West 2045, which, as Lewis highlights, is a rare partnership of landowners, communities, and statutory agencies, community organisations. That area has been selected as the Highland pilot because the partnership is already there and existing. So it's still very early days, and the first meeting of the organising group was early last week. It was last week, but the idea is that this should be at least in some form be ready by the end of this financial year, and then move from there with planning and development of frameworks. The purpose of the Regional Land Use Partnership is it's an opportunity to create a dialogue between landowners and community for the benefit of both, and also to assist the achievement of net zero. It will certainly raise the profile of the North West, which, as you can see from what's been said so far, is something that really is required. Then place planning. This is an emerging, developing methodology which combines development and community planning. Members will have heard of Fort William 2040 and the Skye and Marseille investment plan. I think Caithness is next. I don't know when it's going to come to Sutherland, but clearly the work that we've done in the Northwest will provide a framework and a context for that work, because it is a community-led vision. And then finally on the slide there, members, is lobbying. Now, the vision is a document that could be used by members and by the council to lobby for resources for remote and rural areas across Highland. But we also have to acknowledge that it will be used by communities to lobby the council for resources and for the allocation of services. So that's really the presentation. If I just turn that off, I think is that me back?
Yeah, that's you back, Bill.
Okay, thanks. So that's the end of the presentation. You've got the report in front of you, members. I think that the report has covered, the presentation has covered the main items in the report. But if I could just highlight the recommendation, then that's that committee is asked to adopt the North West 2045 vision, and is also asked to note the development of the Regional Land Use Partnership pilot in North West Sutherland. So thank you. If I could hand back to Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Sophie and Lewis, for the presentation. That was really useful. I've read through the report. It's really comprehensive, and there's been an awful lot of time and effort gone into that. And I totally see the need for such a report and such an initiative. That we are all aware of the issues around the North and West Sutherland area and beyond, in other remote parts of the Highlands as well. So it's a very welcome report. A couple of questions just for you, if you can just maybe some clarification more than anything else. First of all, I'll comment on the high level of responses you had for your interviews and your surveys. Now, that was excellent. I mean, to have that level of response is really good. It's really legitimised what you've been trying to do, and it shows the way forward, which is great. But one thing I was going to ask you is, with regard to the 6 priority areas for the short-term activities up to 2026, is there maybe in the report and I missed it, but apologies if I did. But is there a strategy in place to drive through these actions? Have there been owners identified to take the lead? Because it wasn't clear to me exactly who was actually going to be the lead organisation or the lead group for driving this forward. If you just clarify that for me, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that one if that's okay. We're really on the cusp of the next chapter, if you like, and so the one key thing about this group is that no one of the 12 entities has actually taken up the lead. It's been a very democratic process, and that's been really deliberate, because as you can imagine, with such a wide group, there are tensions there. Potentially there's conflicts between the groups, as you probably see within the Northwest 2045. So we've really tried to use sort of third parties as far as the consultant who's been helping us to drive it forward to be very useful in that sense. But to answer your question directly, we're just at the stage now of having to define, which one of those 6 sort of issues we take forward. But before we get to that point, we wanted to get the vision out there and to get some initial feedback from councillors and other people.
Thanks for that, Lewis. I recognise that, and that's why I was asking the question, because as you're alluding to, there's disparate entities here with different agendas, and I see that so much advantages to working together, but I can also see areas where there may be some area of conflict as well. But you're at the early stages, and I think what you're doing so far is looking great. Okay, I'll open up the floor to other members. Anybody like to ask any questions or make any points? Councillor McGilvery.
I'll defer to Councillor Munro first, because it's really her territory.
Okay, Linda.
Very kind, Councillor McGilvery, thank you. Hello both, good to see you. In the main, I am pro 2045. We need a vision, and as the item just before this one indicates, sometimes it's at national policy level our problems begin. We're not going to solve them locally. It is actually at national level our problems begin. So we need a driving force, and we need a powerful driving force. But that has to be an inclusive force and a force for the good. Now, if you can get a definition of good across Sutherland, I'm voting for you, I promise, because I have never met 6 people where there wasn't 6 different definitions of what was good for Sutherland. And that's just amongst ourselves, I promise you. So here's my problem with what you're proposing, and it is, as it always is, it comes down to personalities. There has to be a leader, and there has to be somewhere of driving forward, and a clear leader. And as you say, a disparate group, many different agendas. In the end, that's either what will make or break. We've seen this time and time again. We have a fair amount of experience across the table now, both in being with the council and as elected members. That won't stop me voting for you. It won't stop me supporting it today. But I want you to know I'm mindful of it, and it's a question I will be coming back with. Because if nothing is a priority, nothing goes forward. And if everybody has an equal say, that can also mean nothing goes forward. So I will be supporting you today, but a couple of things very mindful of. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Councillor McGilvery, do you want to come in now?
Yes, the key findings were very precise, and in fact could apply to across the whole county of Sutherland. And my opinion is the context is that Sutherland is not just Highland Council's unwanted child, it is Scotland's unwanted child. And I think we really have to face up that we are not important in the scheme of things as things stand. Richard has raised the prospect of tensions within the group, the tension between the environmental groups, and the need for economic development is one which I wish you well in overcoming. I totally support what you're doing. I'll back you all the way, and I just hope we get a positive outcome out of the whole thing.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sophie and Richard, for your presentation. And I'd like to congratulate you on your hard work to date. You know, we've long been conscious of the issues of your area, but this is the first time that you have galvanised, you know, seriously galvanised. And just really appreciate your presentation and look forward to supporting you as far as we can. Now, both Jim and Linda have referred to national policy and the importance of national policy. And I think, Sophie, you referred to the Islands Bill. And in Sutherland, we're in the absolutely ridiculous situation where remote inequalities are being defined by water. You know, it's just ridiculous. And I did some work on this some years ago. And when you lay out the circumstances, the comparators with the islands, Sutherland is significantly worse on all levels. And indeed, some of the islands are actually thriving now. So there's a great injustice here. But again, as my colleagues have alluded to, you have to have political support, and we have not had political support at national level in terms of the benefits of the Island Bill. They have their own minister, they have MPs and MSPs. We have, you know, we just don't have that level of representation. And the most difficult thing of the lot is where you have political support, both money and resource naturally follow, which means it comes away from other areas. So we don't gain, but we also lose. So, you know, that there really has to be serious political lobbying in terms of the injustice of the Islands Bill. Highland Council has been doing that, has been falling on deaf ears. We're delighted to support you in that respect. Now, back to your constituent themes. 6.2, you're going to be scoping a local food strategy. I chair the Community Partnerships Food Group, and we have just newly concluded a strategy, a food strategy and action plan for Sutherland. We have been involved with the communities in your area. However, absolutely delighted to work with you more closely on this, and we can give you the strategy and action plan to help with your work. So as I say, really delighted to work with you in that. Another, just an opportunity, let's just look into the future. An unintended consequence of COVID was our dependence overnight on the IT world and how we conduct ourselves. And the meeting today is a case in point. And the opportunities thrown up by virtual working. I don't know if you're aware of an initiative called the Nomad. Richard, can you help me? I can get it to you, but it's a Scandinavian project, and it's where people who have connectivity and equipment and are thus able to work anywhere in the world can do so, whether it's for a week or a year, 10 years or whatever. But there's a balance in Sutherland of a fabulous work and life balance, and you're just ideally placed for that. So you might want to have a look at the Nomad project. I'll get the details to you. And finally, delighted to welcome you to the Community Partnership on the 8th of September. And I'm sure you'll enjoy that too. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Deirdre, and apologies, I can't give you the second part of that Nomad question, but I'm sure it's there. I'll be glad to hear what it is.
Digital Nomad.
Digital Nomad, well, there you go, thank you. Again, Lewis and Sophie, I am delighted with the way that this initiative has been kick-started. I share the concerns of my colleagues about representation and support from the national and Scottish governments, for that matter. And I think what concerns me as well as anything else, and you've addressed it in your report, is that we are facing a reduction of councillors from 3 to 2 in the north and west, which is going to affect the democracy of the area and the representation of the area. And it's I certainly hope that the Scottish Government do a bit of a U-turn on that and support us in retaining the 2 boards at 3 councillors per ward. So it's vital in the West Coast, North and West in particular, to have 3 councillors to try and squeeze the amount of work involved into 2 individuals is going to be really, really difficult. So I'm glad you actually recognised that in your report. And I'm also delighted that you mentioned about reinvigorating community councils. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but I look forward to them all being reinvigorated and making a big difference to the North and West Sutherland area. I don't have any other hands, but did you have any other comments yourself, Lewis or Sophie, you'd like to make before we close that down? Lewis.
Yeah, no, thanks, Richard. It was really just to thank everybody for your feedback. It's just exactly what we need right now, and it's been really useful. And we'll obviously be taking that back to our next meeting and watch the space. You know, I think as I say, we've got a critical mass going. We're well engaged at a local level, and we're really keen to keep that local engagement going because it's really critical. So, no, thank you very much, and we'll hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks for that, Lewis. Okay, members, we are asked to adopt the North West 2045 vision and note the development of a regional land use partnership. Are we happy to do that?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Sophie and Lewis, you're welcome to stay if you wish, but you may have other things you would rather do, so if you want to leave, that's fine too. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we're going to item 5 on the agenda. It's the North West Sutherland Schools Group Overview, and we have Alison Donald here. I think is going to give us the talk through the report that we've already been provided with. Alison, welcome, and over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, members. Yes, unfortunately, I don't have Graham with me today. You know, I like to take the head teacher along. They always give the colour and stories to the data that we have, but Graham is leading his in-service day today, so unfortunately can't be along. I'd like to, you've got the report, and I'd like to just highlight a number of things and then answer any questions or take any queries away from you that you might have. On page 2, it talks about the early years centres, and because of the year that the data was gathered in, it's not completely up to date. So we now have a nursery in Durness, and also the Kinloch Burby Childcare Centre. It has moved from Cala to Highland Council Management. Also, the data on positive destinations on page 4 and 5, I hope you saw it continues to be really positive, 100%. And I spoke to Graham earlier on, and he had 6 leavers this year. 4 are going on to further or higher education. 1 has been employed as a gillie in a local estate, and 1 who has support needs, additional support needs, is being supported to transfer to adult services, and there's hope that she will also have employment in the area too, which would give 100%. Another point which wasn't as positive was the exclusion rate, and when I spoke to Graham about it, he queried it. It says something like 90 point something in every 1,000. I'm wondering, but I will check this, I'm wondering if it's because it's a small number. It was for Durness Primary, and Durness is such a small school. I think it has about 6 children in it at the moment. I'm just thinking it's maybe the percentage is skewed by that. Because if not, you know, it doesn't make sense to Graham, certainly. So I will check that. He did have, he had excluded 1 pupil on a couple of occasions. The year the data is for is 2018-19. And that pupil had been excluded for aggression against staff and children. Support has been put in place for this child, and there is a diagnosis now, and the child has a programme of support in place. So that was the main points that I had picked up from the report. I'm unsure if you have anything else that you would like to ask me, but go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for the report. There are a couple. I think, Alison, could you put your mute, please? Thank you. Yeah, just 1 or 2 things. I think that it's a positive report, but there are 1 or 2 things I just want to clarify with yourself. And I think you probably covered it, to be honest. You talked about the childcare centre in Kinloch Burby, and it's moving from Cala to the Highland Council. Is that correct? And it's because I was concerned when I saw the report. It says an adequate report, which is not adequate's okay, but it could do a lot of improving there. So I presume that's all the issues that were there have been addressed. Other question I have. Well, I'll come back in a second, viewers. I'll let you answer that one, please.
Okay, yes, it has moved. Yeah, it was adequate, was the care inspector's report. That was while Cala wasn't managing the setting. It's now moved to Highland Council, and you'll notice that in the data it talks about Scourie as well. Scourie was reported as very good, and the management is the same management. Aileen manages the early settings across all three, actually, primary schools. So it will be the same management, and we would be expecting that to improve.
That's fine. That was what concerned me. The disparity between the two was quite glaring, and that's why I thought I just asked for clarification on that. So thank you for that. Now, I think I was just going to ask about the condition of Scourie preschool. It's a C in condition. Let me just clarify. I'll get the right part of the report here. Apologies. Yeah, Scourie Primary School, the considerability and the condition of the building is ranked at a C. I'm just wondering what concerns do we have there and what actions are being taken to change that. Thank you.
I think it's the fact that it's an old building. You probably all know it, and you know, when you go into it, it's like a house in a way. It's got different rooms all over the place. Graham has not brought up any issues or concerns around it. It's something I can look into and see if somebody can have a look at it. But I think it's just the age of it. I will ask Graham, and I'll see if there's anything he feels is needed there. But it hasn't come to my attention yet, anyway.
Okay, thank you for that, Dalton. Councillor Munro.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just points that have already been covered. I knew about the Cala situation. I was involved in that, and that's gone back a couple of years ago. And my understanding is that has successfully been resolved, I'm very pleased to say. I didn't know and couldn't work out the exclusion rate. So I'm sure you're right, Alison, and this is about tiny numbers, but I would like you to actually clarify exactly what's going on there, because it does look pretty serious, but I'm sure it's about tiny numbers. And back then, I know the school was certainly in single figures, but still useful to know.
Yeah.
The repair, yes, it is an old building, but they do tend to keep it very, very well. So that's for Graham to name if there's anything that's of particular concern to him. And I would just like to say, against the odds, and they have known some tremendous odds over the years, a lot of its success and forward movement is to do with the staff and very definitely to do with the personality of the head teacher. They really do give it some welly, they honestly do. And he's just got that approach of, right, how do we fix this? Rather than telling us 27 reasons why it can't be done. But they're due all the support that they get. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Linda. And yes, I mean, it is a very positive report overall, and it's good to see. I find it's quite interesting to note that having the previous presentation about the Northwest 2045 and the future of North and West, and I'm looking at the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alison, but by my calculations, the school roll of Clonakilby High is going to be down to 34 by 2027 and 31 by 2028, going on the figures that are on the report. So that really, to me, highlights the depopulation issue in the North and West, and we really need to address that. So 2045 or the Community Planning Partnership or whoever, we need to be working together, Highland Council and all other agencies, to try and resolve that situation, because there is a severe possibility that in 20, 30 years we will be looking at school closures. We'll be looking at basically a barren landscape without people, and that would be very, very sad. So it's really interesting that this report has actually highlighted that and added support to the 2045 initiative. Fiona, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Chief Social Work Officer, obviously I'm always concerned if there's any exclusions from schools, because it has such a detrimental effect on children. It's probably exaggerated as well in the more remote areas, because people know each other, and it's sort of a double whammy in a way. So I'm more than happy to have a conversation with Alison, etc., to see even the language itself. Exclusion is so negative. I know, and as Alison said, that one child in particular, they obviously had issues which they've managed to address in other ways. It's perhaps looking at other opportunities so that we don't negatively use the term exclusion, and actually actively work with the young person and their family. So Alison, I'll happily have a conversation with you away from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Fiona. Yes, I mean, it's small numbers, percentages make things look much bigger than they actually are, so there's not really an issue in that case. Alison, thank you very much indeed for your report and for attending. I don't have any other hands. And members, we are asked to scrutinise and note the report, which I think we've done. Are we all happy with that?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. Alison, I'm sure you'll have something else to do, but by all means, as I said to other guests, stay with us if you wish to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you now. Okay, members, item 6 on the agenda is the review of speed limit between Argyll and Bonar Bridge, and I think we have Joanne Sutherland with us. Yes, we do. Welcome, Josie. It's over to you to go over the report. Thank you.
Good morning, members. By now, hopefully, you'll all have seen the report. I'll just take a quick run through it. Historically, there have been a number of requests to reduce the speed limit between Bonar and Argyll down to 30 mile an hour. Historically, this road was the A9 and its national speed limit of 60 mile an hour between the two roads. But over time, I think the environment and the two communities have changed how they've operated together. So following the requests, we do a number of assessments. We had to do the speed assessments and we look at the criteria in the background. We follow Department for Transport guidance setting local speed limits, which gives us guidance on, you know, where appropriate reduction is and isn't. And this is what we're kind of guided by, and whether it's an appropriate situation to reduce it. So having done the reassessments and the reports, and then looking at the criteria and whether it's met or not, I mean, the average mean speed for the vehicles travelling is well below the 60s, coming in about 49, but not much lower. So overall, the reduction to a 30 currently with the alignment that the road is at is not supported by the guidance we have, and by the speeds that the vehicles are doing. Ideally, what you want is something to be self-enforcing rather than requiring a huge amount of input from the police to do the enforcement. And the alignment, if you know, between the two villages is quite open. It's very clear, it's very level, it's good visibility in both directions. So it's not lending itself from the assessment to reduce it down much more than the 50. That said, we still looked at reducing it to a 30 in alignment with the requests. And from looking at the guidance and trying to apply that, the compromise that we could put forward was to extend the 30 as you came out of a guide to include the hub area, and reduce the section in the middle to a 50. Now that's sticking rigorously, not rigorously, but that's applying the guidance that we have, and that's the compromise we have, and make it enforceable. So that's what the report has stated. That's what we've put forward as a recommendation. I'm very mindful that this isn't what the communities have requested, but from officer's point of view, working with the information, the guidance we have, that's what we can achieve and stay within the guidance. Now, I'm also mindful that the guidance came out in 2013. The legislation dates back to 1984. So times have moved on. This moving about, cycling, moving out, getting out and walking has come upon quicker than the legislation has changed. So I'm very mindful of that, but unfortunately at this time we can only apply with what we've got to work with. So I know that my recommendation is to reduce it to a 50 and extend the 30, but I am mindful that this isn't what was asked for, but I can only deliver that I can do. I'd say open to questions now.
Thank you, Josie, and thank you for the report. First of all, let me say that I recognise the amount of work that's gone into this report and the effort that's gone into looking for compromises in the face of the interests of the community. So I really appreciate the hard work you've done on this. Thank you very much for that. Having read the report and gone over it, and also taken into consideration the interests of the community and a number of representations that I've had, and knowing the area quite well, I personally think that the 1984 legislation is not fit for purpose, and I would like to see this reviewed. I think what is becoming more and more clear as we go forward is that the precedence of traffic over people has gone a little bit too far. We are now in a situation where we're encouraging people to walk more, we're encouraging people to cycle more, and there's a coming together in a lot of ways of the Bonar Bridge and Argyll communities, certainly helped by the Hub and by the Sutherland Development Trust. There is a bringing together there, and there's much more footfall between Bonar Bridge and Argyll. And I think that the perception at the moment of the community in particular is that the speed of the traffic is excessive over that area, and I think that we should be looking at a further reduction. I appreciate that Josie has really pulled all the stops to work within the legislation and given us a compromise of 50. But my own thinking after fully reading the report and giving it due consideration is that we should be pushing for a 30 mile an hour limit over the whole stretch, because I think that is what is in the best interest of the community and the best interest of the people involved. So I'll throw out the floor, but at the moment I'm mindful to seek a deferment of this particular issue to seek to get legal advice on pushing this forward and trying to reduce it to a 30 and taking that, and then ask it to come back to the next county committee meeting. But I'll open the floor now and hear other members' thoughts on the matter. Councillor Munro, you're first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your very helpful and supportive comments. Also, my sincere and genuine thanks to the service. I know they have given this the best possible go they can time and time again. However, your recommendation that we may want to consider taking this further and looking at an overall 30 is very tempting, but I would need some clarity from the officer before I could support that. So if it's all right with you, Chair, I'll put my question to Joanna. If we were not to accept today's proposal, does that mean that proposal would remain on the table while we look at other options? In other words, the communities absolutely must not come out of today with anything less than is already on the table. Thanks.
No, I'm happy to leave this here as an option to always fall back on. The work's been done, we can support it. I'm happy to look at seeing if we can make anything else happen and reducing it, but no, this wouldn't be removed from the table. It's almost the worst compromise we can come up with in a piece, for what the communities have requested, and I think something is better than nothing. So no, definitely wouldn't remove this from the table.
Many thanks, that's really helpful.
Thanks, Josie. Councillor McGilvery.
I Chair. I come across a similar situation, firstly with Spinningdale some time ago, where there is no limit. It is a 60 limit applying, and that is big. It's only the geometry of the road that allows for any decrease in speed. Clashmore also, which is a 40, and to my mind should have been a 30, but again, we look at the guidelines and it's not supported. And most recently, members will recall, we passed a motion to get a 40 through Edgerton to be reduced to 30. And I think we ran up against the guidelines again, and I think the council legal team could not support it because it was not enforceable. In other words, if any enforcement was carried out, it could be challenged by the motorists because it does not fit in with 1984 regulation, and we were just on a hiding to nothing. So coming at this, I was tempted to take this as the least worst option and have it as sort of knocked in as a foothold upon which we can build and try and move on to the next stage, which is obviously to go to the 30. These are two villages. I see them very much as one settlement these days. And it's an argument I would like to pursue. So I'm interested to see what other members think. I was tempted to take this as the first base on the climb up the mountain. But if there's a mood just to say, right, defer, let's just see if we can actually go the whole hog in a winner, then I'm quite happy to listen to that.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Couple of questions really for Josie. If we accept the 50 just now, when does that go into place? And the reason I ask that is that, you know, it's sitting at 60 just now. And the first thing I would like to say is that I very much welcome the 30 beyond where our guy game are. That's really, really important because it passes the hub. Just now we're sitting at 60 at the hub. You don't come into the 30 till the bridge. So that to extend that is massively important, I think. But how long does this take to go through? Because the worst case scenario is that we agree the 50 and move on to the next stage, which would be trying to get it to reduce to the 30. Or would you rather we made a decision where you go straight to 30 or stay at 50? So that's just a couple of questions here before we decide.
Right. If you were mindful to approve the recommendations and we went forward with the 30 extension and the 50, we would start the legal process, which can take a few, best case scenario, you're looking at a few months because we do a consultation, a draft consultation with our statutory consultees, the police, the Freight Transport Association. They have a period, and I would have to double check, I can't remember if it's 21 or 28 days in which to respond. Then we do a public consultation with a similar consultation period. Now, as I say, best case scenario, no objections, it would run through and then we would make the order. However, if there are objections to the order, even an objection saying, I don't support the 50, I want it to be a 30, that is still an objection. And if you can't resolve those objections, it can run on. It can run on indefinitely until such point as the objections are resolved, or we just do not resolve them and then we can't take it forward. So there is that, how long's a piece of string in some cases, and you know, we work towards that. What I would, if we're going to, it's quite a lot of officer time in preparing the order. We have to consult legal, there's adverts in the paper and all this kind of thing. So if we were going to go forward, I would suggest that maybe we defer this, look at seeing if we can achieve the 30 and then start a traffic order process at that time, rather than doing maybe an abortive 50 and, you know, you've got the cost of, if you're going to roll out the signage, and then if you then get 30, you've got another, take all those signs down, replace them all. And it becomes sort of a bit of an exercise, you know, that isn't necessarily the best way of delivering things. So that would be how I would suggest it would be the best way forward, is to hold off with the 50 and take the deferral, take some advice, see what we can achieve, and then maybe bring it back and see it, then take it forward. There is always a risk when we go to the public consultation that we get an objection as opposed to an observation. if somebody writes in and say, I don't agree with the 50, I'd rather a 30, that isn't necessarily an objection, and it's just them making their comments known, but an objection can stall things.
Thanks, Josie. Councillor McGilvery.
In the light of Josie's comments, I'm prepared to go for deferral, Chair. But at the same time, I don't think we should let this go. I think we should pursue it vigorously. And I'm just interested to know where we can actually start lobbying to try to achieve what is required by the public.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, just echo what was said there. I think that, and Josie's quite right, there's no point, if our mindset is on 30, there's no point in agreeing to 50 because it's just too much work involved in it and too much expense in putting up signs that are going to be taken down again 6 months or 8 months or whatever. So, and it's been difficult. I mean, I haven't spoken to anybody face to face about this. It's only through emails and that. So I think to give us a wee bit of a chance to have some proper meetings with them as well, now that we can maybe get back to that as well, if we can maybe defer it today on the assumption that if the community councils are wanting 30, that's maybe the road that we go down. Pardon the pun.
Thank you, Hugh. Having listened to everything everybody said and looking at the fact that we have 2 recommendations for this report, one being a reduction of 60 mile per hour speed limit to 30 by extending the Bonar Bridge 30 mile per hour speed limit to by 270 metres or thereby generally westward towards Argyll, and the remainder of the national speed limit between Bonar Bridge and Argyll be reduced to 50. What I've been thinking about as we've been discussing this or during the debate is that we accept recommendation 1 and defer recommendation 2 with a review, because it seems to be generally recognised that we can get a bit of a gain here by accepting recommendation 1, and then defer the decision on recommendation 2 till we have further advice and look at how we can go forward with the possibility to reducing that to 30 instead of 50. So that would be my proposal. Can I have a seconder for that, or is there any comments on it?
I'll second that, Richard. I think that's quite sensible.
Yeah, I'm happy to agree with that as well.
Okay.
Agreed.
I'm seeing nods all around. So, Josie, that's by everybody accepted that proposal. So it's what you've done here with us is giving us a good step forward by accepting the 30 mile an hour extension, which is great, and then gives us a chance to look at the rest of it through get legal advice, etc., and how we can pursue that. So that is carried. Thank you very much, members. That was really useful, and thank you, Josie, for attending. Well, you want to say something? Sorry.
Yes, please. Can I just ask the members if we've agreed to extend the 30 coming out of Bonar, from an officer point of view, in progressing a traffic order, is ideally we'd like to do the whole thing in one go. So if it's an order to extend the 30 and then reduce the section in between to whatever it would be, would members be satisfied if we held off doing that until we'd come back with the recommendation for the stretch in between?
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is right, because if you extend the 30 and you're actually going to keep the 30 going, you're not really extending it. There's no point in putting your signs up to let you know you're going to a national speed limit when you're staying at 30. Like, so. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
Yes, instead of progressing 2 traffic orders, hold fire to see if we can do it all in a oneer.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah. Members have that. Yeah, I'm getting nods. That's fine.
I think we can start preparing the paperwork in the background for the first recommendation, but we would seek the legal guidance. I'd come back to you in November at the next committee with the in between section.
That sounds like a good way forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh,
sorry, can I just ask? So basically, if you're extending the 30 and then your 30 was going to be the speed limit, you just have repeater signs anyway, wouldn't you? Between Argyll and Bonar, after you do your traffic orders, like, you know. Because no. you wouldn't be going from a 30 to anything other than to 30, would you?
You would still have to promote an order to restrict the thing, because it's a restricted road, it's an A-class road. And so
Yeah.
to change the speed limit, you would still have to progress an order. It's only on U and C-class roads the presence of street lighting automatically means a 30 in that case. But because it's an A-class road, we would still have to promote a traffic order to reduce the speed.
Yeah, I was just meaning that your signs would just be what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
That you wouldn't have your 30 ending at the end of the hub now, because your 30 carries on, like so.
Yes, they would come down, and actually you would enter a 30 as you come into Argyll from the south, and then Bonar from the east and west.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you might need more signage, just obviously.
We review.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's clarified the situation for us. So thank you, Josie. So yes, we'll defer, and if you start to be at work in the background, that'll be fine. And going back to Councillor McGilvery's suggestion that we need to lobby on this, I think we should also consider approaching our MSP to raise our concerns about this 1984 legislation. Okay, thank you, members, and thank you, Josie, for attending. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your time and the effort you put into this. It really is very good. Thank you. Again, you're welcome to stay, but I suspect you've got other things to be doing. Okay, members, thank you for that. Item 7 on the agenda is, there is no paper for it, it's poverty in Sutherland, and I'm just going to say a few words, and I'll open up for any comments that we may have on the floor as well. The reason we asked for this to be added to the agenda at the last meeting was to maintain the awareness of the issues of poverty across Sutherland. As you'll know, I've been active in seeking a reduction in the distribution costs for electricity, given that over 70% of households in Sutherland are in fuel poverty. And that's a widely recognised stat, and that's not just in Sutherland, it's also in other parts of the Highlands as well. So from that perspective, we are continually trying to resolve the issue of fuel poverty in the area, which is exacerbated by the distribution costs. There was a motion raised to the UK government to introduce a national distribution cost, so it takes the burden away from the remote and rural areas. That has been rejected, but we have been told that there is a £60 million UK government fund to help alleviate the fuel poverty. And my question would be, where is that money? How is it being used, and how do we get access to it? And how do our most impoverished communities get access to that funds? So far, I haven't got that information. What I'd also like to see is what is being done across the Highlands in terms of poverty. Because we have issues. I know our Southern Community Planning Partnership are working hard at it. I know the jury's involved. I think we're all involved in one form or another. And how we can align that with what's actually happening across Highland, and make sure that there's no duplication and we're actually making progress, working hand in hand across the Highlands. So that's the basis of this, and hopefully we will have a report at the next meeting, which will give us some kind of details of what's happening across the Highlands, and we can also link that into the planning partnership. I've got Councillor Mackay's hand up. Deirdre.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just in terms of fuel poverty, to flag up to members that our fuel poverty summit, which was due to take place before COVID, is now scheduled to take place on the 8th of October. Hopefully in the community centre in Lairg, and details will be coming out to you shortly, and that'll be a very important conference indeed. I would like to flag up, Richard, you rightfully referred to poverty in the round. There's fuel poverty, food poverty, funeral poverty, clothing poverty. You know, poverty really is at unprecedented levels. I was elected in 1999 and I have never seen poverty on the scale that we are experiencing it. At the food group meeting last week, we were discussing the recent tranche of money received by Kyler Sutherland Development Trust for families. They previously had £10,000, the Helping Hands Fund. for families, and in view of the uptake, the Duchess of Westminster Trust gave a further £10,000 to Cash for Kids to be distributed. So that was on the basis of £100 per child per family. That fund went live on a Thursday, I think it was Thursday the 3rd, and it had to close within 6 days. It was just used up. The issues are no surprise to us: clothing, electricity, rent, preparing children to go back to school. Now, this is happening before we reach our coldest and our dampest months, the most difficult time of the year. The effects of poverty and inequality on the mental health and the life chances of children and families are very, very well documented. And it really is. It's a scandal. It's absolutely outrageous. And as communities, I think we are doing what we can at a local level. But at a local level, what we are doing is simply trying to address the symptoms. The root causes can only be addressed by Scottish Government and UK Government, and they really need to get a grip. I would just like to make that message loud and clear, Chair.
Thank you for that, Deirdre, and good points well made. Thank you. Councillor McGilvray.
Just a thought that's been bothering me for some time, Chair. We went into last winter with COVID resilience money to support food and fuel poverty. But I don't think we have the same base of support going into this winter. And just to raise my concerns about that.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know what the level of support that's there. I know that there is additional money in the ward business, ward budgets. So for COVID, it hasn't been taken away. So there is still money there from a local perspective. But what additional money there is coming from Scottish Government into the Highlands to support as we come out of the COVID, I'm not quite sure. That's something we can ask for some further information on. Okay, remember, I don't see any more hands, so we'll move on to item 8, which is a place-based investment fund, and I think Phil is going to give us a talk through this report. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Members, you've got the place-based investment funds report in front of you. The place-based investment fund was 100,000 distributed each ward in Highland to address the 4 harms of COVID. Those being direct harm caused by COVID, other health impacts, societal impacts, and economic impacts. So the report proposes the following for East Sutherland and Edison. Investment in play parks. This will have a positive impact on the mental well-being of children and young people, and where appropriate will be done in partnership with community groups and the Council's Amenity Service. And it's proposed to allocate 80,000 to play parks in East Sutherland and Edison ward. The second part that has been identified is the investment in initiatives that support mental well-being. So mental well-being across all ages has emerged as a significant impact of COVID. Funding will be available for initiatives that support mental well-being, including those that emerge from the Sutherland Community Partnership Mental Wellbeing Workshop planned for September. There's 2, one for young people and one for other age groups. It's proposed to allocate £20,000 to projects that support mental wellbeing. So that's the whole £100,000 allocated in this proposal. Under the scheme of delegation, grants of up to 10,000 against the above allocations can be made through the ward manager. Any grants greater than 10k would require to be reported back to committee. For Ward 1, North West and Central Sutherland members are still considering the priorities they propose to support, and it's anticipated a report will be brought to November committee. So members, you're asked to consider and agree the proposed allocations for the place-based investment fund for Ward 4 as follows: support for play parks, £80,000, support for mental wellbeing initiatives, £20,000. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Phil. And I have to say that from my perspective, the support for play parks is well justified. Across the Ward 4, there is a lot of interest amongst community groups, families, parents, and there are a lot of support and a lot of activity in local fundraising. So I'm hoping that this £80,000 will go a long way as match funding and will be able to support the maintenance and replenishment of play park equipment. So I'm more than happy to support that, as I am for support for the mental wellbeing initiative of £20,000, which is much needed and going forward. So I would fully support the recommendations and open the floor if anybody's got any more comments or questions. I'm not seeing any hands, so that's carried. So thank you. I'll move on. Okay, item number 9 is the Dornoch Common Good Quarterly Monitoring Report, and again, it's over to Phil just to give us a rundown on that, please. Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you. Members, you've got a copy of the report in front of you. It presents the monitoring statement for the end of the first quarter for the current financial year. Income and expenditure expected to be on budget at year end. And members are asked to note the consultation on disposal of 2 small areas of garden ground in Littletown. That's the report, members. You're asked to note the position of the Dornoch Common Good Fund at the end of the first quarter and note the update on current Dornoch Common Good issues, in this case being the consultation. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Phil. Councillor McGilvery.
Yeah, I note the report. It's quite comfortable with me. I await with interest the results of the consultation.
Yes, thank you for that. I don't see any other hands up, so are we happy to accept this recommendations? I'm seeing nods. That's great. Thank you very much for that, folks. And we're on to the final item on the agenda. It's the minutes of the Sutherland County Committee meeting held on the 17th of May, which were approved by Council 24th of June. Do we have any comments or issues from the minutes? I see no hands up. So that's fine. Okay, thank you, members. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. I think it's been very useful, very productive, and I wish you well for the rest of your day. Thank you very much indeed.